In 1 week, folks, we'll be releasing our latest audio documentary, Escape from Inglewood. This story is on Tony Davis, who rose above the violent streets of Chicago's South Side while pursuing wrestling greatness. And man, I cannot wait for you to hear this story. All 3 episodes drop next Monday, April 25th, on this podcast. The trailer goes live on Wednesday, so stay tuned for that.
PMA, positive mental attitude, and definiteness of purpose, understanding what you want, what you're shooting for. Those are 2 big ingredients for success. And
we can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast, presented by Spartan Combat. Go to SpartanCombat.com to shop merch from the great Yanni D, David Carr, Kylie Welker, Vito Urijah, SpartanCombat.com. Folks, this episode is with the great Urijah Faber, the California kid, one of my idols in the mixed martial arts game for a decade plus. I mean, this guy gave recognition to the lightweights and was the first one to do it. Urijah is in the UFC Hall of Fame. He's a former WEC world champion, and he's a 2-time national qualifier for the University of California Davis, rest in peace, wrestling program. Really appreciate Urijah making the time to come on this podcast. Fan of the week goes to our friend Keith Gothard. That's Keith_Gothard on the gram. A supporter of this show, a fan of wrestling. Thank you very much, Keith. We appreciate it. Now let's give it up for the California kid, Urijah Faber. Urijah Faber, welcome to the podcast, sir.
thanks for having me, man.
Excited.
Is that a Mike Tyson on Sports Illustrated?
Yes, sir.
I have that too somewhere. I have it up in my gym up in Point Arena. It's like a private gym. That's a great picture.
Dude, it's legendary. Yeah, it's good vibes for the office. And you know, I looked at the whole trajectory of your career to kind of start this thing. I love how going into your freshman year at UC Davis, no scholarship offer, and to get ready, you go to like J-Rob and like this junior college training camp. Talk us through your regiment that summer.
So I was kind of a late starter when it comes to wrestling. I mean, considering a lot of my peers, I had, Chad Mendez, TJ Dillashaw, and Cody Garbrandt, and all these wrestlers that started when they're Lance Palmer, started when they're like 4, 5, 6 years old. I started when I was in the 7th, 8th grade, around there, kind of, getting my foot in the door at that point. And really camps and double seasons doing freestyle were the thing that made me catch up, really. So I just kept that mentality from the get-go. I was always playing chase. I got beat up pretty good in my first couple freestyle matches, and didn't really understand the rules per se, because I was just going to compete. I wanted to compete. And I had lost to 4 guys my senior year in high school, and and 3 of those guys ended up going to UC Davis at some point in my weight class. And so I was just going hard. I went Jay Robinson, and then I went to the junior college, Sierra College, and I was doing all their conditioning and just I figured everybody was doing that. In college level for me, I like to hype things up like it's going to be this big monster. And so I was preparing for the worst, someone's training when you sleep kind of mentality. And so I went in and was just, way ahead on conditioning. And, 3 of the 4 guys I lost in my senior year ended up coming to Davis, and I was, blowing them out of the water when I got there. And, because I had that constant need to get better and thinking everybody's doing more, and it turns out everybody wasn't doing more. A lot of these guys that started when they were young and they were in season and out of season. And I was just in season, and that's kind of carried me through the rest of my career. And when I mentor the guys and everything else, kind of talk about that mentality.
Yeah. I love how you didn't get psyched out by it though, right? Because a lot of guys would see that dude, all 3 of those dudes beat me. They're coming in. We're probably going to be around the same weight, but just kind of reminds me of your book. And one of the first rules you have in there, positive thinking breeds success. And that's obviously something you've carried with you to motivate you through those trainings.
Yeah, absolutely. And, PMA, positive mental attitude, and definiteness of purpose, understanding what you want and what you're shooting for. Those are 2 big ingredients for success. And, I was just believed that I could, and then had to put in the hard work, and it's trial and error. You get knocked down, you got to get back up and reassess things, make a new plan. And, I did my homework that summer, and it paid off for me. I ended up, for the varsity spot my next year, I was the guy to go to, and held that spot my entire career, and then went on to coach there, and had a decent wrestling career there. But as a late starter, I was just kind of getting started, really.
What'd you pick up from Coach Zaleski in your first year there?
Man, Zaleski was, the lineage was from Gable. And so, the biggest thing that I learned from Coach Z, both as a coach of mine and then I coached alongside him, was first and foremost, the things that were said before and after practice were really important. And I had, not really experienced that in the past. I had some great coaching, but it was like the discussions had before and after practice that were the new thing. Because I had a coach prior to Zaleski in my college career, and I think it was about halfway through where I got Coach Zaleski, and I just really liked that, building the mental side of things, and addressing problems, cancers on the team, or talking about what went well and what went bad, and choosing topics to hit on as reminders for the day, and just really the mental side of it was big.
So he wasn't your coach from the get-go. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I had Mike Birch was my coach originally, and he was a great coach as well. But when I saw the difference there was first off, Coach Z, when he came in, it was, he'd been shopping around for other places to go. I think his family wanted to be in California, and the first thing he did was, in a practice, we went in and he goes, "All right, guys, shake hands, get your partner." We did warm up, and then he goes, "All right, 30-minute go." and like everybody's like looking at him all confused and like, what was that? 30-minute go. Like, it was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, 30-minute go. and then you look around the room, and in every group there was like one guy that was broken and the other guy that was on top, and that kind of set the precedent for things being a little bit different. And the mental side of the game, and Birch was a great coach as well, but there's just a little bit of an edge on the mental side of things that I think was handed down from the wild man, Dan Gable.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Coach Zaleski's brother, one of the greats in the 80s. And, when you were at UC Davis, he was at Iowa still. So yeah, that had to be a big jolt. And then you finish as UC Davis's all-time wins leader. When you're graduating, are you thinking, I'm going to be a high school coach, I'm going to run a club, or are you already dead set on going MMA?
There wasn't really a big opportunity at that time for mixed martial arts. There was no weight class in the UFC. It wasn't like a set out thing, like this is what you do. Like now wrestlers, this is a viable route they can take to make a living with the skill they've acquired. At the time, there was no weight class for me. The lightest weight class was 170 pounds. And I basically was just banking on faith in the sport, that it was going to grow, and thought, this thing's just the beginning. I could see kind of the future in that front. And I was just doing what was fun. I mean, I was getting paid like well below the poverty line to be a coach, and I was bussing tables, and I was coaching kids at wrestling camps, and I worked at Hitchcock Azevedo wrestling camp, and I worked Coach Zaleski's wrestling camps, and Mark Munoz started having a camp, the West Coast camp out in SoCal, and then I started my own little business, TLC, Top Line Coaching, and I was going around to all the different high schools and junior high programs and trying to rustle up money and selling T-shirts, and so I was just, I was making, I think, a guaranteed $7,000 or $8,000 to coach at UC Davis full time, 10 months a year, like full-time days. So, you can imagine it wasn't a decision I was just having fun. I was wrestling and doing the fight game. I made $200 to show up the first time I fought, $200 to win. And for me, that was a lot better than $11 an hour being a substitute teacher. And so I just kind of continued down that path and kept on like not worrying about the future. And ironically, that's what got me to where I am today.
And what was the fight where you initially quit doing everything else and just banked on fighting to be your sole source of income?
I had a lot of little things that happened that helped me out a little bit throughout my journey. A couple years in, there's some developers and young guy who decided to sponsor me, and that took a little weight off of my shoulders. And I think that was like maybe 3 or 4 fights in. And then I started my entrepreneurship like pretty early on. I started, selling T-shirts, and I was doing the coaching thing. And so I was finding a way to make ends meet and learning about entrepreneurship, like by throwing myself in the fire, not even realizing what I was doing. I was just making it. And so I had like 2 businesses right off the bat that I didn't even think of as businesses. It was just like, I got a fictitious business name statement and started coaching kids for the wrestling. And I ran one of the camps that Zaleski had through my business. So all of a sudden I had all this money come in, even though I just got to keep like $1,000 or $2,000 of it. And so it hasn't really stopped like that. My entire career, I've been juggling a lot of things, and I grew up doing that too. So it was like, 2 households, and, it was good in academics, and I was playing sports, and I was also doing acting and modeling when I was a little kid. My mom had got us into that when we were young. And so I was always like juggling a lot of things. And I just think I've continued to do that, like maybe too much sometimes, like until today.
Dude, how much did your parents starting the coffee shop when you were in high school impact your kind of entrepreneurial spirit?
Looking back, I would say that's the big igniter. But even more than that, both my dad and my stepdad were not great business guys, but lived their own life. And and that's why I do what I do, is freedom of my time and energy and effort. My dad was a framer by trade, but a contractor, and he was a skilled guy, not incredible in business, but he could always make a living and made his own, called his own shots. Finish a house, you're done. Mm-hmm. And and then my stepdad Tom, he had a couple different businesses. He had one, Gardens of Eden, where he had in the back of his house, he had all these pools that he was doing water lilies, and before that he was mowing lawns, the Fabulous 40s, and his hands were always bright green from mowing lawns. But I saw that type of mentality. And then my mom and my stepdad Tom started the coffee shop, and that had a lot of success. They put their heart and soul into it. It was about 400 or 500 square foot place, but really, really high quality stuff. I was just thinking about that today. It's funny you asked, because I got a bunch of strawberries off the side of the road. And I remember all through junior high and high school, just cutting strawberries at the house and putting them in bags and freezing them for smoothies. And then we'd have to go this place for gelato because they had the best gelato. We'd go this place for the croissants because they had the best croissants, and this place for, you know, the bagels and the baked goods. And like, we had a real quality product and a passionate, you know, kind of group of us family running it. And it was the first time we actually saw like some money where we weren't struggling, like, you know, we have to hang our clothes on, we still did, but we didn't have to hang our clothes on the wire versus putting them in the dryer to save energy and, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, those kind of moments were like, you know, man, we're doing well at the moment, you know.
We can use the dryer.
Yeah, I could use the dryer without Tom complaining about it.
But so you were like actively involved in running it, or not running it, but like helping out and like working there and like you said, cutting strawberries and whatever you had to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was, I remember my parents had left town at one time, and I was, you know, into my, I think, junior and senior year, and I was responsible for getting the baked goods at like 4 something in the morning. And I had also, there was like some event I really wanted to go to. It might've been like a party or something. And I was like responsible, but I still like to have fun, you know? And I remember staying up all night to go be at that event with my high school buddies, and then driving first thing in the morning and going to get the baked goods. And sometimes at night we'd be in the gym, in the coffee shop till 11 at night, you know, making sure things are perfect. And then go back to school. And then on the same side with my dad, I was humping lumber from young, you know, 5th, 6th grade. Like, I was there as a runt, being told what to do, like picking up nails and throwing trash and doing all that kind of stuff. So the work mentality has just been ingrained in me.
And like, even like when you were WEC champ, you know, I watched the series you did. I think it's called like Warriors of the Cage or something.
Yeah,
like,
Warriors Nation. Yeah.
Old school. Yeah. I was watching it this morning, and I'm like, dude, how are you running all this stuff and training? I mean, were you like juggling business and training like your whole career basically?
You know, it's crazy. It didn't feel like that, but in retrospect, I was. I also had a guy, Poppies Martinez. I just talked to him yesterday. He was a guy that was kind of like a sponsor, but I became like a trainer mentor for him, and his tribe helped me out a little bit. It was like all these lucky things were kind of happening, of course, with hard work, to where I was able to be a full-time athlete, even though I was doing 16, 17 hours a day of whatever to get things done, but it felt like I was full-time, you know? And so, another thing was, before, one of the reasons the economy crashed in 2007, 8 was because anybody could buy a house at that time. So I bought a house just because I thought I could, you know, I'm going to get a house. And like my buddy, Yosef, was a Egyptian, you know, loan guy. And he was like, Dad, I'll get you a loan. I'm like, all right. Like, what's your income? $7,000 a year. And what's it? You want to buy a house for 300,000? No problem. So I was like, you know, I don't know how, stated income loan through the business that I had started, that I only got to keep a couple grand, but 40 grand went into it. I had a work history because I was a coach and trainer, but I had gone to school to be a teacher. Like, I don't know how he got it done, but I got a loan in 2004 or 5 where anybody could get a loan, and most people defaulted and had trouble at that time. And I just filled the house with a bunch of fighters, and we're all, you know, helping pay the bills and, you know, carpooling to the gym. And I just, you know, was staying busy and barely squeaking by the skin of my teeth, but just loving what I was doing.
And is this how the, like the block of houses eventually started? Because like at some point you had how many houses, and like how many guys were living on your block or in your house at the thick of it?
Yeah. We haven't talked about that in a while in interviews just because people forget, but I really started like the first little commune of fighters. And I bought that first house, moved in a bunch of guys.
Like 5 or like 10 guys, you think?
No, more like 5 guys. And Matt Sanchez, he was a 2-time All-American. He came and lived with me. And TJ Dillashaw lived there at one point. Lance Palmer, and like, you know, the list goes on of all these different guys that lived there. Dustin Akbari, who's, you know, a jiu-jitsu world champ. And so I had the first house, and it was, you know, bunch of guys living there. And then I started making a little bit of money, and my best friend, Tommy, who wrestled at Escalon and UC Davis with me, him and my other buddy, Virgil, bought a house next door. And then we bought another house next door to that. And then we bought another house next door to that. And our other buddy bought a house. We had like 5 houses in this community. Over 10 years, we had probably 70, between 30 and 70 fighters that had lived in those different houses, coaches, and stayed there for stints of time. Like a lot of the fighters in the UFC that aren't on our team have come and stayed before they were in the UFC, because we had this like train with Tam program. And it was a really cool time, actually. And just a humble little neighborhood that was safe from burglars, as you can imagine. And, and yeah, it was just everybody with a like-minded mentality working towards what they wanted to do.
Dude, when you guys had like a cookout or a block party, the energy must have been just off the charts.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. And like I said, like the first house I bought, I overpaid for it in 2000, whenever it was, at the time. And so it was a humble little home, but I put in a really nice pool and spa as soon as I got enough money. So it was like ghetto fabulous. And we had the pool and spa in one house, and like the barbecue and sauna in another house. And we had a really fun little environment at the time. It was cool. That's
amazing. And yeah, just think about, like, better than anyone, all the dudes that have come through there. And like, it's just, even like you said, guys that weren't team alpha male, just coming through and training. That's amazing. Kind of like one of the first, it kind of feels like an OTC, but for fighters a little bit,
Yeah, it really was. And because I was world champion at the time also, it wasn't like I had a secret that I was trying to protect, and I wasn't intimidated of anybody coming there. So a lot of guys that even fought later, and my guys fought down the road, had come through and trained and cross trained. It was kind of like an open door thing. Like, you got to invite, show up. And I think probably 4 guys I fought: Scotty Jorgensen, Brian Bowles, Charlie Valencia. I think maybe Eddie Wineland. Quite a few of the guys that I ended up fighting had at least stepped foot, the Pettis brothers, at least stepped foot and hung out. And that's actually guys like Clay. Yeah. Clay was always my buddy, and he just loves good environments. And so he would show up and hang out for a week or two, like he does all across the globe. And then when he decided he wanted to show up, he showed up with all of his stuff and was just like, "Hey, I'm here." And, but we hung out long before he ever was part of the team.
Does he have the camper out there right now?
I don't think he does now. I think he's got a little place to stay. Actually, my buddy Mike want to fight Peterson. He has an Airbnb, and Clay has it set right now. So he's sitting pretty. He's got his blue beast out here. And nice. It's funny. I had a bag of Clays in my garage for like 2 years, and I did not know what it was. I thought it was kind of my stuff. I'm like, "This is my stuff? I don't know." And I realized that he puts bags at people's places so that he's a nomad.
Like drop bags?
Come. Yeah. Yeah. Like, so that he has, when he comes back, if he comes back, he's got some stuff there.
I love his like take on life. It kind of like jives with your, importance of freedom. I mean, that's like the freest dude I've ever met is Clay Guida, man. He's just living it. At the Illinois State tournament a couple of years ago, pulled up and I saw Clay's camper there, and I was just so excited to get to riff with him a little bit. He's the best.
Man.
Let me ask you about this one, man. I love that this ADCC story is kind of how your nickname came about. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was, again, going through the book. How long had you been doing jiu-jitsu before you went to your first Abu Dhabi? Maybe your only Abu Dhabi.
That was my only one. About a year and a half. And what had happened was, I was current world champion in some small organizations, Gladiator Challenge, King of the Cage. That happened pretty quick. And then I was still getting paid dog shit, really. It was I was selling tickets. That was where I make most of my money, and selling t-shirts. That's how I make some money. But, I was getting a couple grand here, a couple grand there. $1,000 was a big deal back then for a purse. And I saw online that you could do a grappling tournament and make $10,000. I'm like, what? So I emailed the guys, And I'm like, hey, my name's Uriah. I wrestled in college, and I'm currently fighting for these organizations, and I'd like to do your tournament. And the guy got back to me and said, okay, yeah, we'll get you in. And I didn't realize that was a big deal. I told my jiu-jitsu instructor, he didn't believe me at the time. He's like, no, you have to go. I can't even go. I have to go back to my hometown and compete in Brazil to even get an option to be able to go, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, they said I could go. He's like, no. And I said, so I pulled up the email and I said, yeah, I'm going. And then he's like, oh, what? And it was a big deal for him, And
so this is the actual ADCC or like a qualifier event?
No, it's the actual ADCC.
Holy smokes.
And so then I didn't, I was already training really hard anyways. And I had just come out of college. So my wrestling was on point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I get there and it's like, Tito Ortiz is in it. And, Frank, or who I can't remember. They had all these high level fighters that were in this competition. I was like pumped to be there. And Quentin Rampage Jackson was my buddy at the time. And he was, I used to watch him fight, and he would come to my little events for the Gladiator Challenge and stuff. And he was like, man, if I were you, I'd take that California vibe and like take it to the bank, like cowabunga and hang loose and blah, blah, blah. And really run with it. And he's like, California, and like basically the California kid. And then Gilbert Melendez was competing in that competition as well. And there was a bunch of people from all over the world, China, Japan, Brazil. And I told him, good luck. I said, hey, good luck. Do it for USA. And he said, F that, do it for Cali. And then Bruce Buffer asked me my name. He was announcing that competition. He's like, now it's Uriah. How do you say that? And blah, blah. It was before I fought in any events he was announcing. And then, and I said, I came up with the California kid at that time, between Quentin and Gilbert and repping Cali and having Bruce announcing me and everything. That was the one.
That's sick, man. So is this like when Marcelo Garcia's still going through there winning this, or like who was the guy who won your weight?
What's his name? He was a really good Brazilian wrestler. What's his name? Oh, I'm blanking at the moment. But I won my first match against Parampina from American Top Teams coach, and then I lost my second one to Marcos Feitosa, who was the champion, the weight above the year prior, at 170 pounds.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I was putting the Iowa style wrestling, just clubbing heads and fighting him, because the first 5 minutes, there's no points. And the second portion there is.
Mm-hmm.
And then 7 minutes in, I had his backish, and he was like 6'1". He stepped over and took my back and submitted me. It was the only time I've been submitted in competition. But
wow.
He told me afterwards, he goes, man, you're the strongest guy I've ever wrestled or gone against at any weight. But it was really just because I was doing the club in the head and arm dragging. I was just purely trying to get him fatigued,
Mm-hmm.
for the first 5 minutes.
Just some hand fighting. Dang.
Hard hand fighting.
I love it. I know you got a fleet there on your hands. I just there's a couple other things I wanted to ask you about, but we'll close down with this, man. I love your take on how a lot of the successful people you've met are delusional in a way, and they embrace it. Like, what's your, like, how'd you come to that?
Yeah, I do. Well, that's two things. And as I started doing more interviews, I talk about, right, just like my coach did, talk before and after practice, but like the delusional guys, like a Conor McGregor and, the guys that do big stuff in any realm, really just believe the impossible, and just it's reality to them, and delusion is delusional, depending on whose opinion it is. And it's no longer delusional once it happens. So that's the other thing with excuses. Being a guy that makes excuses and a guy that is delusional, those are two really good things if you're doing it correctly. Delusional to where you don't have a chance and you're being unrealistic, like, man, I think I could throw my football over the Yosemite, like obviously there's some limitations, human limitations, but people do incredible things. There's always somebody that's done the thing that other people want to do. And so why not you? Right. And so I encourage people to be as delusional as possible. Think about things that other people may think are strange or, seem impossible. And then on the excuse side, a great excuse is one that's fixable. What's your excuse for getting beat by this guy? Oh, he's just a lot stronger than I am. Okay, well then you need to get stronger. Well, he's, technically here. If it's just, just he's better than me, or he's been doing it forever, I'm not going to catch him. Those are the closed-minded thoughts. We need stuff that's fixable, and a good excuse is one that you can fix. Right, Romy?
Which is something you don't hear a lot, right? You think, you hear excuses like a 4-letter word almost, but then hearing your take on it, thought it was interesting. So I figured I'd get you just to kind of expand on it a little bit.
Yeah, no excuses is I love excuses, right? And I've seen some of the best delusional people give the wrong excuse, but if they really believe it and then they go work on it, and then they believe that they're going to win because of that, that's more important than making an excuse, because the self-belief part is the more important part. It's not. And so even if you're a little bit delusional and you've made an excuse, it's the wrong excuse, but you really believe that because you're delusional, you're going to have a better chance of winning. Like, really.
It's crazy to,
you want to go see Callie?
It's crazy to think that that's true, though, because think about your situation, man. If you were a senior in college and someone would have said 10 years from now, you'd be one of the most one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet, they would have said no. You would have said no way. So like you had to be that way.
Yeah,
Hello.
and I remember having some delusional thoughts, slumming it after an amazing summer out, teaching wrestling and hanging out in one of the most beautiful places in California, and just being euphoric about the future, even though there wasn't a set future. And that's the good delusional stuff.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love your presence and optimism. I know we'll let you go, man. It's been an honor to chat with you. And thank you, Clay Guida, for setting this up. Yeah, man, I did a ton of research on this. So at some point, man, if you're ever in Chicago, if I'm ever out your way, we'll swing by and we'll do another one of these, brother.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm down to do another one for sure. And thanks for working with the kids, man.
Yeah,
these are the best investment right here, man.
Absolutely.
I can't wait for you to partake.
Thanks, brother. Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Right.
I've been a fan
it's
for a long time.
It's great to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah, Wrestling Mafia, baby. Love all you wrestlers out there.
That's it, man. Take care.